This video is based on our first online lesson on Microsoft Teams, which was a whole lot of fun. I've just taken the content and tried to make it look a bit better, although I am going to try and make the video in one take because I spent way too long making the slideshow. So, our lesson today in preparation for your upcoming essay was about structure, in particular introductions and conclusions. I've used the analogy off the top of my head in class today of a pyramid, almost a pyramid in reverse with your essay. So it might look a little something like this, but the overall structure starts with a thesis in your introduction, which then leads into your preview statement where you really bring the text into your question, what we call a preview or an extended thesis. So you just fill in the key terms, the key discriminators of the question with stuff from your text. And then each topic sentence should be a continuation from that preview statement, and all of your evidence should link to each topic sentence. So what you have at the end of your essay is a really cohesive argument which addresses the question. So your thesis is based on the question. Your extended thesis is where you bring your text into that and link that to the question, and then each topic sentence is a continuation from that. So your introductions, basically, what do we use them for? We want to introduce the question, we want to introduce the text, and right here, almost pretend that you're introducing the text to someone who's never read it before. It should pass the stranger test. The other thing I've said here is only include the necessary information that the marker needs to know. So if you're writing about Slaughterhouse-5 and you've got all of this stuff about war and post-traumatic stress disorder, there's no need to mention tralfamadore if you're not going to talk about that in your essay. So only bring in the information that the marker needs to know. The last thing you need to introduce is the major points of your essay. So one thing I didn't really demand is a global statement, and that's because probably 1 in 10 global statements that I read I think are effective. Global statements essentially try and set you apart from everybody else who's just going to jump straight into the question. So you can definitely do them if you're really good at them, but they're not essential. The 3 things that are essential are introducing the question, introducing the text, and introducing your major points, which become your preview statement or your extended thesis. When you introduce a question, that's your thesis. And I said in class that I don't actually care whether you introduce the text or the question first. So if you want to start with your thesis, then move into a summary, that's fine. If you want to start by summarizing the text and then linking the text to the question, that is also fine. What you must do is you must end with your preview statement, your extended thesis. You must end by introducing what your body paragraphs are going to be about. All right, I mentioned that I don't really want a global, and that's because quite often we get globals that sound really impressive as one sentence, but then don't necessarily link to the question. So hypothetically, I've got a very simple question here. Context is an important factor of the reading process. A lot of the time we get these incongruent globals which have nothing to do with the next sentence. So I've just written an example of one here where it says, Cormac McCarthy once claimed that there is no such thing as life without bloodshed. Context is an important factor in the reading process. Can you see how those 2 sentences just don't link? All right, so with Slaughterhouse-5, it might sound impressive to have a quote like this from a famous author about war and bloodshed, but if it doesn't link into your next sentence, it's just going to confuse and disorientate the marker. So if you're going to do a global, make sure that you do link that appropriately to the question and then to the text. I've also included here a summary of Slaughterhouse-5, which would further disorientate the marker, where you say Slaughterhouse-5 is about a man who gets kidnapped by aliens after World War II. If you look at these 3 sentences in a row, you can see how if you're not careful about explaining yourself properly and making your essay cohesive, you can really confuse and disorientate the marker, and that means your essay is off to a really bad start. So use your introductions to introduce the question with a thesis statement, introduce the text, and to introduce your essay, and more importantly, use the introduction to give a really good first impression to your marker. All right, conclusions. Now I say in class that conclusions are the least important part of your essay, but they are an essential part. Some markers will really punish students who don't write a conclusion. So at the very least, write a conclusion. And if you write a really good one, it can certainly boost your mark. So the way that I look at conclusions is they're basically introductions in reverse. So in your introduction, where you might end with a preview statement where you introduce your major points, in a conclusion, you'll summarize your major points to start. In the essay the second last thing you do might be a thesis statement, whereas here you're going to link all your points to the thesis, to the question in your conclusion. Obviously, don't summarize your text again, but in an introduction where you might start with a global, you do have the option, if you want, to end globally, to impress the marker with your final words, and best of all, to leave them something to consider or something to think about, something universal that they can take into their own lives. All right, thank you for watching. Now it is your turn, and I hope you enjoyed our first online lesson today.